Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Women's History Month panel. My name is Christopher LaFuria. I am part of the Penn West University Communications Office, and today we are going to be presenting Trailblazers in Motion. So today we're going to talk to members of our athletics community, from coaches, administrators, student athletes, and trainers, and we're going to talk about women athletics. We kind of have a unique experience here in Penn West. We have one university, three campuses, and three women athletic directors. So it's very exciting that we have brought together our athletic directors, our coaches, and our athletes to talk about the history of women in athletics, who some of our inspirations are, some of the successes and struggles, some stereotypes and misconceptions, and also the future of women in athletics. We are live streaming this on YouTube, so if you have questions at any time, you can ask them in the comments section. This will be available after the live stream, so you're welcome to revisit this and listen to our Falcons, Fighting Scots, and Golden Eagles. Now, so before we get started, we are going to welcome our panelists today. We have quite a few from each campus. We're going to do quick introductions, and we're going to meet our panelists who are going to be speaking today. So let's start with April.
April Getson, head women's swimming coach at California.
Audra.
Audra Newman-Snyder, head athletic trainer at Edinboro.
Autumn.
Autumn Taylor, Clarion University.
Bella.
Bella Gilberto, women's soccer athlete at Cal U.
Beyonce.
Beyonce Kelly, women's track and field, California, PA.
Bree.
Bree Kelly, head swimming and diving coach for men and women at Clarion.
Callie.
Callie Wheeler, head women's basketball coach at Edinboro.
Cassidy.
Cassidy Snyder, I play volleyball at Clarion.
Karina.
Karina Pazik, swimmer at Clarion.
Danielle.
Danielle Fleming, head women's basketball coach at Clarion.
Haley.
Women's basketball, senior guard at Edinboro University.
Jamie.
Jamie Sally, assistant women's soccer coach at Edinboro University.
Jennifer.
Jennifer Heron, head women's volleyball coach, Clarion, and SWA at Clarion.
Jessica.
Beth Strom, head women's basketball coach at California.
Catherine.
Catherine Robbins, director of athletics at Edinboro.
Karen.
Karen Herpy, director of athletics at California.
Sandy.
Sandy Eastep, assistant track and field coach at California.
Sophia.
Sophia Johnson, women's volleyball at California.
And last but not least, we have Wendy.
Hi, Wendy Snodgrass, Director of Athletics at Clarion.
All right. So as you can see, we have quite a few members of our panel today, and we wanted to thank everybody for joining us. Whether you're on this panel, whether you're watching from home or checking us out on YouTube, thank you so much for being here. It's an exciting opportunity to talk about Penn West universities and our women in athletics. So let's get started with our first question, and I want to bring the athletics directors and some of our students up to discuss this. So when looking back at the history of women in athletics and the current scenarios here today, who are some of the most influential women in athletics, and who are some of your personal inspirations? So Karen, let's get started with you. Like, who are some of your inspirations that you've looked to today?
Well, when I first started at the university, about 2 years in, our vice president and our athletic director sent me to a conference called NACWA HERS, and that was for administrative leadership and advancement. So I was so fortunate during that conference to meet some pioneers in women's athletics. The speakers included Christine Grant, who is a Title IX guru for women's athletics, Charlotte West, who was the president of the AIAW, and Donna Lopiano, who was the CEO of the Women's Sports Foundation. So they laid the groundwork for my administrative knowledge in athletics. They brought in Joan Cronin from the University of Tennessee, who worked with Pat Summitt to talk about fundraising and leadership. And so I was very fortunate just to get to know those women early in my career and then build upon that as I continued through my work.
Very cool. Wendy.
I agree with Karen. You know, we've definitely had the great privilege of learning from a lot of incredible women in athletics, and they really are the trailblazers to allow us to be in the role that we are. I think I'm unique and really fortunate that Karen is actually one of my mentors and somebody who's been really influential for me. She's who put the athletic administrative bug in my system when I was a GA down at Cal many moons ago, and learned a lot from her. And it's kind of, I don't know, it's a full circle moment for me that now I get to work with her in Penn West, knowing that she was such a great influence on my life and my career early on when I first started in administration.
And that's kind of the unique experience we were talking about with 3 different campuses in one university, where we are competitors on the field, on the court, but we do share a lot of resources. We mentor each other. We help develop coaches and student athletes. So I appreciate that response. How about some of our athletes? Haley, who are some, whether it's a coach, an athlete, somebody you look up to? Haley, who's somebody that's your inspiration in athletics?
Yeah, I'll probably say Caitlin Clark, just because of how far she's taking the game. But also Angel Reese, just because she's somebody that looks like me on the big stage, not only being a student athlete, but able to make money for what she's doing, and she's using her platform to connect with other kids and to connect. I also think she faces a lot of backlash because she's not afraid to be who she is, but I would probably say her just because she's someone of color and using her platform to connect with others and motivate the youth and expand women's basketball.
Thanks, Haley. Let's go over to Cassidy from Clarion. Who are some people that you look up to, whether it's a coach, a family member, or a teammate, somebody that you look up to as an inspiration?
So before this meeting, I actually realized that growing up, I had 5 out of 6 of my coaches were females. So that's really cool. One of my big inspirations is obviously Jen. She's on this call right now. One of the reasons I've decided recently that I want to get into coaching. So yeah.
That's interesting. And it seems almost like in athletics, when you have a coach that you can really relate to, it almost kind of gives you the coaching bug as well. So as soon as you're done as an athlete, you want to continue that. How about Sophia? Sophia from Cal, who are some of your inspirations in athletics?
Let's see. I'm a big fan of Minnesota volleyball. So there are 2 or 3 players. They were probably from 2019 that I really enjoyed. Regan Pittman, Alexis Hart, and then Taylor Morgan. And I just think that what they worked on, not only on the court, because we play the same sport, but just how they carried themselves outside of the court and off the court with mentoring and really getting involved with their community. Those are 2 big things that I'm really striving to get after a little bit more. So I would say those 3 I really look up to.
Very cool. And I think it's really interesting that when we're talking about our inspirations, very rarely do we mention their athletic prowess. Like, you look up to these role models as people that are doing well for their community, they're doing well for themselves. You kind of look at them as more than just, athletic role models. Bella, wrap up this question. Who are some of your inspirations?
I think the entire U.S. women's national team has set a very good example for women's athletics, especially fighting for equal play, equal pay. That whole movement just really kind of gave an example of how we should act as women athletes and what we should ask for, and just how we should act on and off the field as well.
Yeah, so that's a really good segue to our next question. I'm thinking of people from that soccer team, like Megan Rapinoe, who are very confident. They, aren't afraid to speak up. And that kind of leads me to think, like, what are some qualities that you think are important to women in athletics, whether they're coaches, whether they're athletes? So let's bring up April and Beyonce from Cal. What are some important qualities that you could think of for women in athletics?
I think some important qualities that are important is resilience. Like you should be able to bounce back from any setbacks such as losses or injuries, because if you just keep looking back in the past and worry about the negative, you won't grow as an athlete in the future.
Yeah, that's very interesting. April, how about you?
I would say just the overall confidence of just not being afraid to speak up and let your voice be heard. I think that's crucial for women when we don't necessarily get heard in a room full of males sometimes. So I just think the confidence to know that regardless of who we are and what gender we are, just the ability to speak up.
That's really interesting. So how about our Clarion folks? Let's bring up Bree and Danielle. What are some of the attributes, some of the qualities of, let's talk about coaches. What is it like? What are some traits, some abilities that you need to have as a coach, whether it's at the college level or beyond?
Yeah, so I think like as a player, I was always like a high energy, passionate player. And as a coach, I think as a woman, sometimes it can be viewed as negative. It's like, oh, women are so emotional, they're too emotional, whatnot. But you look at some of these great coaches and Don Staley or Kelly Harper from Tennessee, and it's like that's a great quality to have. And don't let anybody take it as a negative. It's great to be passionate. It's great to have high energy. I find that it just rubs off on our players, and I think that's a great quality to have as a coach.
Definitely. Thanks for sharing that. How about you, Bree?
I think there's many qualities, but one quality that sticks out to me the most is consistency. I think the more you project fairness across the board, especially, in a situation where I coach men and women. So I really try to be consistent with the way I approach things, the way I react to things, the way I talk about punishments, things like that, but consistency across the board. I also think organization is key as well. It's one of the things that I really try to focus on as well.
So from your standpoint, I think you kind of have a unique perspective coaching men and women. What are some of the successes and some of the struggles that you see in that role?
Well, I can say over the course of, I just finished my 15th year at Clarion. In the beginning, I think I approached it all the same, men and women. I've learned a lot over the years what the women need versus the men. So it's like completely two different programs. And I approach the men differently than the women. And I give feedback differently. I coach them in practice differently. I've learned over the years that they're not the same. They don't react the same. They don't need the same things. So it is a unique situation, but I actually really love it. I love that balance of both.
Yeah, and I think that kind of talks to your need for consistency and organization too. You have to make sure that everything's there, the plans are in place so that you can execute it, because you have a lot of athletes in one place. You got to make sure everybody's individual needs are met and that you're growing together as a team. Let's hear from our athletics directors real quick. What are some qualities you look for when you're hiring coaches or when you are looking for people to step up in roles? What are some of the most important qualities that you look for?
For me, it really is, I listen a lot for the overall student development piece. While we're hiring coaches and the expectation is to win competitions, it's also about developing our young people so that they're extremely successful in society when we leave us, or when they leave us. So, I'm really looking for the developmental piece, how they've supported students in the past. Mental health of our student athletes is extremely important to us. And just the overall experience that they're having with us. We want them to enjoy what they're doing. Athletics should be the escape from every other stressor in their life. It should never add more stress to their plate. So I'm really looking for that developmental piece, the relationship piece the relationships they build with our students, and that overall experience that they're going to be able to provide to our student athletes.
Yeah, because a lot of these athletes that our coaches are coaching are, living away from home, or they're, experiencing like real adulthood for the first time. So you kind of have to have coaches that, are not just there to win games, but like Wendy, as you said, the mental health aspect of it, the physical health, the training and the protection, like all of that is there. So those are some of the qualities that we have. Karen, did you want to add something to that? What you look for in coaches and people that are part of your athletics program?
Sure. I mean, besides the love of the game and the passion for the sport, I echo what Wendy said in regards to knowing your student athletes outside of the playing field, understanding what challenges that they may have in the classroom or in life, and really developing that student athlete from the time that they're a freshman to the time that they're a senior. So we want a positive experience for our student athletes, and we want that ability for them to grow as they're here. And so we always look for the right person as a coach to be able to do that.
Very good. And Catherine, I know you're a little under the weather, but I feel like this question is very important to you as a director of athletics. So go ahead.
Absolutely. Yes. I'm on the same page as both Wendy and Karen. Just to add, I've only been the athletic director for 6 years and was a professor before this. So obviously academics is a high priority for me as well. And fortunately, all of our coaches, our students do excel in the classroom as well as in their sport. And that's so important because at some point, the sport ends, and like you said, they have to adult. So in our department, we've developed a department motto, and we hire to that motto, and we're always looking for student-centered first, and that includes everything that both Wendy and Karen have already mentioned. We're student-centered, growth-minded. The growth-minded part, especially in this day and age, if we're not growing and learning all the time and getting better, finding ways to get better, we're not going to be successful. So, and then the last part is our team players. So over the last few years, I think everybody in my department would say that people have kind of pushed out of their silos and like their program centric thinking, and have really kind of come together to support each other. Our student athletes all support each other. Our coaches support each other, and we work together for kind of the common good of the whole department rather than just individual programs. So those three things are kind of the pillars that we look for when we're hiring anyone here in the department.
Very cool. Thanks for sharing that. That was a really good response from all three of our athletics directors. So I think Bella talked a little bit about this earlier when she said she was a fan of the U.S. national team, about how they fight for equality, about how, the playing field isn't always equal for men and women's athletics. So let's bring up Jess and Sophia from Cal. Let's talk a little bit about the playing field for women's athletics compared to men's. We're talking about TV coverage, funding, pay, popularity. What can you talk to us about in regards to women's athletics?
Yeah, sorry, Sophia.
No, you can go. Go ahead.
I just think it's bringing that up. When you ask the athletes earlier, who was their inspiration and who they looked up to, they all mentioned females. And I was thinking to myself, if you would have asked me when I was younger, it definitely would have been a male. So just thinking about that, the playing field has definitely become closer to equal, just with visibility, if nothing else. I think women athletes are definitely more visible now than when I was younger. And it's such a cool thing to hear, Caitlin Clark or Angel Reese or the women's soccer team, because they're visible now. These young people can see them. They're on social media. You see their games on TV now. Whereas when I know years back when we were younger, it wasn't. It was the NBA that we watched, or it was, men's sports. So I just think that's a really cool thing that they have the opportunity to see women compete, on a national stage, on TV, and kind of follow these people on social media as well.
So I also want to bring up Haley too, because I think you made a good point earlier. You talked about how you like to watch Angel Reese. So if you watch like men's basketball, if you watch the NBA, there's a lot of, for lack of a better phrase, swagger. There's a lot of personality. There's a lot of this and that. But once you get to women's basketball, it seems almost like there's kind of like a different perspective when an athlete is, emotional. They're not just a basketball player. So kind of talk about that. What the leveling the playing field for like athletes like Angel Reese.
Yeah, I think the game is sometimes called differently. Like men, as you stated, are like able to express themselves differently from the female athletes as far as like emotions and quicker to get like a technical foul. But as far as Andrew Reese and that stuff goes, I just think the platforms continue to grow. We're upon March Madness for the Division I level, and I have really heard anybody talk about the men's game. I just keep hearing how intense and how good the women's games are planned to be, and I just think that it just goes to show how far the game has came as far as that goes, and how much more better we can continue to get.
Very good. Thanks for sharing that. How about our Clarion representative? So Danielle or Cassidy, what are your thoughts on the playing field of women's athletics? Is there something like we should be highlighting more, or do you think it's kind of changed over the last couple of years? What are your thoughts on this? Like another that was interesting to say, like I think it was Jess that said it when we were younger, maybe both boys, like young boys and girls watch NBA, they would watch men's athletics, but now it's kind of shifted a little bit. And I know a lot of us shared our inspirations to be women, in athletics. So what are your thoughts on the playing field? Is it level? Do you see it getting more level as the years go on?
Yeah, I think if you for our sport, so women's basketball, yes, I would probably like to see a little bit more other sports highlighted. So like I'm a big women's tennis fan. And I think that it has gotten better with Naomi and Coco and things like that. But to just go back for women's basketball, yes. When my male friends are sending me their women's brackets and my male friends are, did you see this highlight? And they're sharing highlights. I'm like, look at y'all, because 10 years ago when I was playing, like, no, that wasn't happening. So I think social media definitely plays a huge part in that. We don't have to wait for ESPN to notice us. We don't have to wait for TNT to show our games. We can, in a sense, show ourselves. Our players and these women can show their highlights. And even smaller schools have the ability now to really highlight some great things, and that goes to high school ball as well. So I think it's definitely gotten better for women's basketball for sure. I think we do have a little ways to go in some other sports that I would like to see some more attention, media attention, but I definitely like to see where we're going for women's basketball.
So Cassidy, I think Daniel did talk a little bit about how basketball is kind of gaining its popularity and momentum. But how about volleyball? I know Clarion had quite a season. I know individually, Cassidy, you had a great season yourself. How do you feel your sport is being viewed by the public, by people that are interested in athletics? Talk to us from a volleyball standpoint.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of exciting stuff that happened last season with collegiate volleyball. We had, I don't know if you saw the Nebraska game, it was outdoor. It was like 89,000 people showed up. And actually there's a new pro volleyball league that just started this year, so that's doing pretty well. So it's really awesome to see stuff like that. A lot of like the collegiate players that are coming back to play pro. It's really awesome to see. So definitely going in the right direction.
Yeah, and you said the outdoor volleyball. There was also that outdoor basketball game at Iowa too. So Autumn, how do you feel about the state of women's basketball now?
I definitely think that women's basketball has really been just going in an upward direction. And I feel like it's going to continue to change. Like I know that people brought about March Madness coming up, and I feel like it's going to be one of the most like crazy March Madness ever, because like last year in that national championship game with LSU and Iowa, it generated 9.9 million viewers. And that has been like the most that we've ever had. And I feel like now going into this season, it's going to be crazier than it was last year. And I even like did a little bit of research on this question, and I saw that according to ESPN's data, it said there was a 37% increase of people watching women's basketball, which is absolutely amazing. And I see on Twitter all the time, or X, all the time about NBA players, giving these women's college basketball players their flowers. Like I see Shaquille O'Neal just said that he's only going to be watching like the women's basketball March Madness, and you see Magic Johnson highlighting these great women's athletes. And I feel like now they're getting a lot more publicity, they're getting a lot more coverage, and you see even more opportunities for NIL deals with these women's basketball players and being able to be signed to these great big platforms. And I just feel like, for these years to come, it's going to be absolutely crazy and electric.
So before we move on to the next question, Autumn, in response to what you just said, why do you think it is? Do you think it's the star power of the new generation of women athletes? Do you think, it was just time? Do you think social media has impacted this? So we have our Clarion folks with Karina, Cassidy, Danielle, Autumn. What do you think about this? Like, what is the reason why it's exploding on ESPN, or like what you said about Shaq watching the women's tournament? What do you think is the reason for that?
I think that the women's game is just becoming way more exciting for people. Like, it's making people so want to come back and watch it again because they see these great players playing and they're out there like having fun. You see Caitlin Clark, pulling up from the logo. You see Hannah Hidalgo averaging 6 steals a game. You see people like South Carolina, going undefeated. Camila Cardoso having that big 3-point shot that she hit over Tennessee. And you see them just having so much fun, and just like you see these teams just having this great camaraderie and chemistry. And I feel like for the audience, they're really feeling that when they watch it on their TV screens, where they want to come back and continue to watch these players play. And I just feel like now more than ever, I think even more than the women's game, in my defense, I feel like, these women's athletes, they're having fun out there, and it just makes it even more exciting for people to watch.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that builds into the fact that now more than ever, women are allowed to have fun with the game. I feel like in the past, it was kind of looked down upon, where if they're doing all these things that men are doing in their sports, it's show-offy, it's too much, but it's really being encouraged now, which I think is adding to that.
Very, very cool. Very interesting.
I think I just wanted to comment on something that Autumn had said as well. Like, I would be remiss if I didn't say it's being supported more from more people. And we kind of hate to say this, but you kind of have to give them their flowers too. But when you have people like LeBron James, Steph Curry, and these huge NBA and these men backing, not only backing, but supporting, they're showing up at the games, they're retweeting, they're putting their money where their mouth is. Steph Curry just signed Malaysia Fuwali from South Carolina. And that's a huge deal, that's big. And so I think we've always supported us. I think women in sports, we knew how great we were, but to have the support of these high, profile athletes watch and support and our games and things like that, I think that has shown I hate to say mediocre, men or whoever of the world that, hey, this is actually cool and we're great. So I thought that was a great point that Autumn had brought up.
Very interesting. So we talked a little bit about the successes and the growth of this field, but what are some of the stereotypes and misconceptions that people might have about women in athletics or women athletic programs? So let's talk to Sandy and Bella from Cal, and Karina and Danielle from Clarion. And I'm also going to bring up Jennifer Herron too. What are some misconceptions that people might have about your individual sport or women in athletics in general?
I think just training still, and I've kind of reverted, like I've caught myself even in those moments. You still hear comments like throw like a girl and things like that. And it's you're seeing a little bit more of a shift, like, yeah, I throw like a girl, all right, like that's awesome. But there's still that misconception that girls maybe aren't as physical, aren't as athletic, aren't as dynamic, and maybe I've seen it in our sport even. It's things that they've taught in the men's game, they don't teach to women. They teach different skill sets. For some reason, that's kind of going away. which I think is a really positive. I think a human is a human, and we can do these physical and pretty special things. And I think that we can teach our student athletes to be athletic. And I think that we can challenge them and get them to train on the same level. Like our bodies might not always do the same thing, but we can still train them on the same level and put that same level of work in as women that they do on the men's side.
Yeah. Bella, how about from your area?
I think one of the biggest things for me as an athlete is that women are seen as less skilled all the time. And I hear it from my brothers, my friends, even our men's team. They always say, like, oh, you'll never be as good as me because you're a girl, or oh, you can never do that. Or they undermine any accomplishment you have. Like if you score a goal, it wasn't as cool as theirs just because we're a girl. And we hear it all the time. And I just feel like it's not only unfair, but it's very damaging to the self-esteem of women and our confidence. And it kind of makes you feel inadequate in the sport that you've played your entire life. So I really feel like that's one of the bigger ones that kind of gets to you like every day when you're just trying to play.
Karina, do you have a similar experience?
Yeah, I was gonna say that I think there's a misconception that women aren't as competitive. Um, it's not the case. I've seen it. The women and men swim together at Clarion, and I see women trying just as hard, if not harder, racing the men, beating the men. So I just feel like that is not the case anymore. Not that it ever was. So yeah.
Very interesting. So Danielle and Sandy, while we talk about the misconceptions about women athletics, add on to that, what do you do? What do you say to your athletes to kind of get them past that? How do you take those, misconceptions, myths, and things, and use that to kind of drive your athletes?
For me, my what I tell my players, go at them. Whatever they say you can't do it. And a great example, we had our March Madness and we had like a 3-point contest, and it was against the men's team and our team. Love kids, so don't tell them I said all this. But our winner, went against their winner, and we beat them. Shout out Autumn, who's actually on the call. But we beat them, and it was just one of those things where it's like we can. I think when the world tells our players like you can't go in there, you can't be physical. The women's game, I hate when I watch our game or, and we get a soft call or we can't do this, we can't be physical, we can't talk. And then right after we watch the men's game and they're jawing and they're hitting and they're banging and there's nothing. That's very infuriating. But, I just go back in the message to my players is like, don't even worry about all that. You play, you do what you're supposed to do. If you want to be physical to a limit, obviously, but don't let them put their boundaries and their limitations on you. I think just kind of reiterating that to them is important.
Yeah, I completely agree with Danielle. Like if people are telling you can't do it or you're not the same, we have to go out and show them we can do it. In the world of track and field, we're going to be more directly compared to the men versus the women because we're directly right after them. So there's no reason why we can't run really close to their times just as fast as them, even kind of beat some of the guys in maybe the 100-meter dash. Like I had a girl who ran 11:09 last year, and it's really fast, and she's beating a lot of guys that might be at our conference meet in that kind of race. So it's not we need to push past those barriers and give them something positive to talk about and not worry about what anyone else is saying.
So you use it as a motivator to kind of get that your mindset ready that you're going to do whatever you need to do to be successful and not going to let any naysayer prevent you from doing that. I also wanted to add Jamie from Edinburgh to this chat too. Can you talk about that little event you have during Welcome Weekend where the women's soccer team takes on the football team in an event and kind of the environment behind that?
Yeah, so we do something similar that Danielle said that they do at Clarion against their men's basketball team. Every preseason, we have a penalty kick competition against our football team. And we have a great relationship with our football staff and the guys on the team. They nobody stands at midfield. In soccer, you're supposed to stand at midfield. They're like surrounding the goal. They're right outside the 18. The football team is very loud. They're screaming and yelling. And it does us a huge favor by kind of mimicking a penalty kick competition. But this year we won, which it's our sport. We should win. And our players put it on social media and got a lot of great reactions. But then there was the trolls that came through and, well, try to do a football drill well, of course we're not going to do a football drill. People don't take it sometimes for what it is and that it's fun. And so we always get those haters and some of the players on my team were pretty upset about that. But I just told them to ignore them. And, when you put stuff out on social media, that's just what's going to happen. I mean, like Haley said, look at the hate that, Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark get for pounding their chests and, pumping themselves up. So, but yeah, we do the same thing. We have penalty kick competition with our football team and we greatly appreciate that. And we have a great time with it.
Yeah, it was, we talk about men's sports versus women's sports, and it was kind of discouraging when Steph Curry and Sabrina Ionescu were doing a 3-point contest. And you looked at social media and I was like, well, are they using the same size basketball? Are they shooting from the same 3-point place? It's like James said, we're just taking it for competition. It is what it is. We're going to be having fun. And a lot of this is for competition, for entertainment, but it's just a shame that it takes social media to kind of ruin that. And people that aren't actually on the field competing can try their hardest to damper what you're putting together. So beyond some of those stereotypes and some of the successes that women go through in athletics, let's talk about, from a coach's perspective, about being a parent and a coach at the same time. Does this kind of lend some people to make decisions about that? Is it hard balancing being a parent and a coach, trying to raise young kids, but also balancing athletics? So let's bring up Karen and Sandy from Cal, Bree from Clarion, and Callie and Jamie from Edinburgh. Talk a little bit about what it's like being, in athletics and also being a parent at the same time.
So I'll start. I think that the women on this call that are moms, and many of them are superhuman, because it takes so much to balance everything in your life. You want to be successful in your career, but there are demands on you from a mom standpoint or a family standpoint. And I think that it's important as administrators that we develop a system to really encourage females that are in coaching roles to stay in their coaching roles, to do what we can to provide a support system for them. It's so challenging. People don't realize the late nights, the coffee, your kid was sick, but then the demands when student athletes come into your office because they have needs as well. Or as administrators, we're working a late night and have to go home and help our kids with homework. So I think that it's so important from that piece, but then equally important that as women, we find time for ourselves. What is our balance of staying organized, relaxing, and giving that time for ourselves? So certainly a support system is something that's needed for each person. But as I said, as administrators, it's so important that we encourage our female coaches to stay in their ranks, or as administrators to stay in their role and to stay in that profession.
Yeah, how about
yeah, I definitely agree with everything that Karen said, and greatly appreciate, you speaking from an admin standpoint. And, Dr. Robbins here at Edinburgh does a fantastic job at supporting myself and others who have children to make it a family-oriented environment. It's definitely the most challenging part of my job. I would be lying if I said it wasn't, because I'm sacrificing, going to my son's basketball games because I have my own game that I have to coach. And there's memories and moments that I'll never get back, but I think it's pouring it into other athletes. I think that's what really helps me with understanding I know I'm missing out on something for my son or my daughter, but I'm pouring into somebody else's child and helping them grow and develop and transform in the game of basketball, but also in life. And I think, Catherine does a great job here at Edinboro in welcoming families into this environment, and it's also rewarding. I mean, both of my children get to sit on the bench. It's pretty cool when I'm in a timeout and my son's next to me and says, "You only got one more left. You only have one more left." And then they get to obviously develop relationships with my players, and I think it's really rewarding for my players to be viewed as mentors. I mean, my daughter idolizes Haley. She's on this call right here, and anything 24 or has to do with Haley Sims, like, she's all about it. So I think it's really challenging, but I think if you have the support that Karen's talking about, and obviously my husband's a big supporter too. I think that's really important. I think it can work. We talked a little bit about growing up and coaches, and fortunately enough for one of the athletes that was on the call, for me, I've never had a female head coach. I've always had a male head coach. And if you look in the PSAC right now for women's basketball, on the East, they're all women's coaches. On the West, we have 3. And I remember as an assistant, Jeff Strom was one of few female head coaches in our league. So it's pretty cool to see that evolve. But last thing I want to say is we got to continue that for these young women so that they can see you can be a mom, a wife, and a coach in this profession and still be successful.
Excellent. Thanks, Kelly, for sharing that. How about Sandy, Jamie, or Bree?
I just, one thing that has worked for me, I have 2 children. And there were times where, if I'm being honest, also, I thought, I don't know if I can do this, nursing, pumping, coaching on the pool deck, and running this, what I would call a business. I just had to speak up and really communicate to my husband, to the people around me, to my assistants, what I needed from them, what I needed to do for myself. And something that I talk to a lot of the girls in the team now, because sometimes they say to me, "Gosh, I don't know how you do it with your 2 kids and running around and doing all this." And I say, "You can do it too." I try to find pockets of time. That is, I send emails at midnight or 2 in the morning when I'm nursing or pumping, or when my kids are finally in bed and I've caught up on laundry. I send emails really early in the morning if I'm awake and we're done with practice or I don't have practice. So I try to find pockets of time to get all that extra work in, or get laundry done, or do the things I need to do, like household, to balance both. But I agree with Callie. My kids get the opportunity to grow up with 50 to 60 athletes, male and female, that they look up to, and they think they're their family. They think they're part of the team. They come to meets, they support. I think it's great for them too. And while there are trade-offs, I do think, as coaches, we get this time, some of us probably in the summer or when the kids leave campus, to have a little bit more downtime. I really take advantage of that. I spend as much time as I can. I take my lunch break to volunteer in the lunchroom at my son's school every other Wednesday. 1 hour. Instead of lunch, I run to his school, serve lunch, go back to practice. But that is a way for me to connect. So I think finding little ways or pockets, or showing up, but also communicating. For me, it was really important to say, "I need help. I need you to do this because I'm doing this." Or, "I have recruit calls tonight. I really need you to take care of dinner." Instead of, typically women are expected to come home. And funny story, I came home, I was at the NC2A championships last week, and one of the coaches said, "I can't wait to go home and just kick my feet up." And I'm thinking, that's funny, because I'm going to go home to a pile of weeks-long laundry. That's the difference, the expectation on women who are also coaching, and then away for weeks or weekends at a time. And then we come home and have everything else to do. And I love that, and a little bit OCD with the laundry and everything else. So he would do it if I asked him, but I also feel like that is an expectation I put on myself. So I try to encourage and be a good role model for my my swimmers, and I tell them all the time, like, it's not always easy, but one thing I did kind of adopt when I had my second child, I wasn't sleeping. I was never sleeping. He nursed around the clock for 2.5 years. But I decided that when I walked in the door at 5:30 for practice, whatever was going on at home, whatever tiredness I had, I was going to put that aside and do the best job I could do. The kids deserve it. You know, whatever you have going on at home, we all try to give the best and be our best every day, regardless of that. In our minds, we're juggling a million things and schedules and all of that. But, you know, if you can communicate, ask for help, get a planner, you know, all those things, you can do it. And I really try to be that role model for my girls, especially.
Yeah, thank you, Bree, for sharing all that. And I think it's really interesting. You see a coach on the sidelines or near the pool, you know, shouting for their players, but you never really know what's going on in that coach's mind, what's going on in their family, what's going on, all the things that you have to balance and juggle. So I appreciate for your viewpoint about, you know, what it's like being a mother and being a coach at the same time. Now, Jamie, were you going to add something to that?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, you know, we talk about being role models. You know, totally agree. Need the support of our administration, support of, you know, I'm an assistant coach, so my bosses never question me, you know, if something comes up with my daughter. But I remember a story. When I had my daughter, we went away to Cleveland State for the spring, and the girls came up to me. I was sitting in the corner of a 40-degree Cleveland State dome, and I was sitting under a blanket between games, and the girls were like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, I'm pumping breast milk. And they were like, "What?" Like, and it's just things that you have to do. And it kind of came full circle. 2-3 years ago, I got a call from one of our alums who was the head coach at Ohio Dominican. And she's like, "I have to tell you, nobody knows, but I'm pregnant and I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know how I'm going to continue being a head coach. I'm due right before the season." And she said, "I'm telling you because I remember when you were pumping at the Cleveland State Dome in the cold." And so we just had like a long conversation about, you know, that she could do it. You know, she could do it. It's going to be tough, but you know, she has a great husband as well, and it's just possible. So I think sometimes I have to remember that we're also, you know, we're the role models now, you know, as we've gotten older.
Yeah, and to make that connection, I'm sure you didn't even realize at the time you were making a connection with with an athlete while you were at Cleveland State, but it's something that you don't expect to, you know, leave a lasting impression. But you know, I'm sure it feels great to know that you had an impact on the student in a positive way. Sandy, we're going to add something as well.
Yeah, I'm a relatively new mom. My son's only 3 months old at this point, so I don't have as many experiences as a lot of other people. But as a new mother and now being a coach, the biggest challenge I face is the guilt of whether not doing enough for my son or not doing enough for my athletes, and making sure that I do find that balance. And my support system, especially with the coaching staff, my husband is one of the coaches as well. So, like with our head coach, he's very supportive in making sure that we find the time, we reschedule everything so we kind of make it work. But we do need to show a lot of young women and women on our teams that you can do both and you don't have to be forced into picking one or the other.
Very interesting. Well, I feel like this part of the segment was very personal and I'm very glad that everybody got a chance to share their story, because that was very powerful. And I think it's, you know, it's going to leave a lasting impression, whether, you know, somebody that wants to be a coach, but also wants to have a family. So I appreciate everybody sharing their input and their feedback. Before we get to our next question, I do want to bring up Audra and Catherine from Edinburgh. I do want to point out that as we're talking about women in athletics and how things have changed over the last, you know, 10, 15, 20 years, Audra is our first female head athletic trainer at Edinburgh. So if we could be all on mute and kind of talk, I think that's a really cool milestone to reach. So Audra, how does it feel, first of all, being the first woman athletic trainer, head athletic trainer at Edinburgh, but also balancing men's and women's sports, you know, trying to care for and relate to, you know, all different sports and all different backgrounds. So how does that feel?
It's a little crazy. I went to grad school here in 1990 to 92. So I filled my mentor's position, and he was a strong male. I was a female that played sports in high school for men. And in athletic training, the strong males were always present. There was a couple women in college that kind of inspired me. And I did watch that as to how they balance their family and athletic training, which is it's a unique job because we're there all different hours all year long and trying to balance all of that. One of the things that I've been thinking about is how I ended up getting here. And I look back at it, and my mom was an abused child, sexually and physically, and then came out of a original, her first marriage was abusive. My mom raised 3 children. I happened to be fortunate enough to have the later parent, so I had a solid family, but my older siblings they were raised alone in the 50s, early 60s by my mom, who never went on welfare. She was a very strong woman. So I look back at, I never thought that I couldn't. I just did it. I didn't think, oh, I'm a woman, I can't do that. If it was set before me and I thought it would fit my life, I just tried to achieve it. And I think that's a huge thing for women, is to not look at those barriers. I looked past them. Like, what do I need to do to achieve that goal? And it was just incremental as I was changing through my life. And when I was younger, I bought into that mold as to, you can't have a family and be an athletic trainer. So I tried the 9-to-5 job that I hated. And I think the biggest thing with us being in our professions is that, I raised a son as a single mom, being an athletic trainer. I wasn't home a lot. He was integrated into my job, but what he saw was a strong mom that knew she could accomplish things, but I did it with passion. I didn't work a job and hate it. I truly passionately love what I do and the impact I'm having on the students. And I think as far as them being male and female, I look at each individual athlete. I don't look at them as, the typical football player. I try to really get a basis of where they come from, what they're struggling with. And everybody's different. Females are different from each other and males are different from each other. So just really individual person and trying to get to know each of them.
Thank you so much for sharing that story. It's interesting to see where you come from and how your experience brought you to where you are. So how does your experience growing up, how does that affect your outlook when you're providing care for hundreds of students on a daily basis? Is it something that you take very personally, or is it something that you view as more than a job?
Absolutely. It's definitely helped me realize how there's so much damage that comes with these kids. There's not all of them, but there's a lot of kids that come from backgrounds that have been very hurtful. And so I do take that into consideration, and as to how to mentor them and help them believe, like, we just had one of our athletes was just totally insulted by an opposing team, and she was in tears after the game. And I knew how damaging that is, and just walking up to her and giving her a hug and making her realize that she's beautiful and she's strong and she did a great job, and doesn't matter what that other person's saying to them, but just really building up people's character and their motivation to be good people.
And I don't know if a lot of athletes have that opportunity to have an adult role model, that's always got their back, that's always there to support them. So, I applaud you for doing that. Also, I feel like getting to know everybody on this call, it's not like something out of nature that you do that. That's part of who you are as a person. That's part of who you are as an educator and as a trainer, as a coach. You kind of have that personal innate ability to just relate to somebody, to know that you need to be the role model, that you need to step up. So Audra, thank you so much for sharing that. We're going to bring up a couple of our athletes to talk about, what are some, we talked a little bit about how athletics have changed over the last 30 years. From more women being coaches and administrative roles, but there are still some challenges that our athletes face today. So I'm going to bring up Sophia and Beyonce from Cal. Let's also bring up Haley from Edinburgh, and I'm going to add Wendy from Clarion too. What are some of the biggest challenges in general that women face in athletics today? Whether it's the perception in the media, social media, but also talk about how that's changed in the last 30 years. So why don't we start with Sophia?
Yeah, so I think this is a great question. Social media has taken at least my generation by storm. Lots of girls, lots of people in general use it to network, to keep in touch with everyone. And I think that that social media within sports has taken a good road, but also a bad road. And with the good road, it's been more coverage, there's more awareness of women's sports, there's more things going on. It's just more visible to see women in social media now, just because, it's a different platform. We're reaching different audiences or reaching different places in the world because many places have social media. But then on the flip side of that, I think with women at least, social media is a big contributor to just body image issues and like social issues just with like the way that you look, because women's sports, it's a lot of it's about the way that you look, the way that you act. And I think that negativity is often perceived in social media. And I know that back 30 years ago, social media probably wasn't a thing like it is now, if it was anything, but definitely now it's something to really look at and to take control of, just because we don't want women to become any more damaged or made to feel any less than we already have been, but just take back what we have already learned and just keep reiterating that we are strong and beautiful. So I think that just social media itself has had a big role in just a challenge for women.
Yeah, for sure. So from Vulcan to Vulcan, Beyonce, what would you have to add to this?
I think some challenges is like high performance expectations, because since social media and it's like more media around, there's a lot of expectations, especially if you like one of the top athletes and you probably have like a winning streak or PR all the time. So everyone have this high expectation, and it gets like nerve wracking when you have to compete and you feel like you have to prove to someone. So, in like the last 30 years, there wasn't really much media or any like sort like newspapers about women and stuff. It was like mostly men. So it wasn't that much pressure for women. But now, since it's social media and it's always negativity on social media, especially if you do bad, like it's kind of hard. So I think those are the challenges.
Haley, what do you do when you reach some of those challenges? Whether you see, somebody in the stands that's heckling or something negative on social media, how do you take some of those challenges and turn them into opportunities, turn them into positive momentum for you when you hit the court?
Yeah, I'm just somebody who I believe in controlling what you can control, and you can't really control what people say and how they act in the stands. And I just stand firm on like my play will speak for itself. You know what I mean? I don't really get in too much back and forth with people on social media. I dealt with that a lot in high school. If I was younger, and popularity and performance usually gains you popularity, but as far as social media goes, I just believe that it's part of a significant growth. That's part of the women's basketball growing. And I just know, like, whenever I'll see a highlight posted on Instagram or like Twitter, I'll just like go to the comment section and I'll see what people are saying, or people like really appreciate what was posted, or sometimes I just see really degrading comments, usually from young men and boys just judging what was done, or who the ratings saying nobody's watching this, the NFL game is on, just a lot of degrading and rude comments towards athletes. But I also think that the same people that's having those negative comments are the same people that's also watching. So I think it's also contributing to that and to the popularity of how the game is growing. I also think Kobe Bryant was a big advocate for women's basketball, and when he left this earth, I think that kind of like spread to the other, like the Steph Currys, the LeBron James, those I think he stood for. I think people are trying to continue that, and I think that it just goes to show, like I said, how far women's basketball has came and how far we have to go. So I just think it's all about what what you can take. But like I said, I'm somebody who doesn't even involve myself with the back and forth with social media and the people in the stands, and I just try to let my game dictate, and hopefully the team wins and we can just shut everybody up.
Yeah,
But
you got
before
your
I
goals.
leave, I wanted to say I have to go to class. I didn't want to interrupt you leave, but I wanted to say thank you to everybody, and it was nice to hear what you guys had to say. And you are doing a great job of hosting this meeting. You are getting everybody involved, and I love to hear everybody's perspective. But I do have class, and I just wanted to thank you guys for having me.
Thank you, Haley. We value your input, and we're proud that you're able to join us. So best of luck in classes, and thanks for joining us. So Wendy, as somebody that's been involved in collegiate athletics for, nearly 2 decades, how has women's athletics changed? How has it improved? And, with every generation of students, there's new challenges, whether it's, social media or whether it's, health crises, different, you guided Clarion through COVID, all these things. How has, women's sports come along since you first became involved at Clarion?
Yeah, it's come a long way. The ladies on this call have made some really great comments about the challenges that face our student athletes. I don't take for granted where we've come in women's athletics. We're 50 years into Title IX. And I think to my own mother, who never played high school or collegiate sports because she didn't have the opportunity to do that. And so I feel very grateful that I've been able to experience sports my entire life and be involved in it to this point. So I don't take it for granted how far we've come, but we've got a long way to go. Social media definitely is a big influencer, I think, on our student athletes in a good way and a negative way. We know the research shows that girls drop in their self-confidence more than boys do by a young age. And so I really feel strongly that as women, we have to empower one another. We've got to lift each other up. We have to support one another to build that confidence back up for our young ladies. I'm raising twin daughters. They're 15. I feel like they are extremely fortunate to grow up in this environment. They watch our student athletes, male and female. They watch them struggle. They watch them succeed. They watch them celebrate. We do highs and lows in our family every night at dinner, the dinners I can make home to be with them. But, and sometimes my lows are really low because I have a student athlete that's struggling. While I don't necessarily share that entire story with them, I say, I had a meeting with a student athlete. It was hard. And so they learn a lot through this awesome environment that we provide our student athletes of this family, and that they know that they're supported from our coaches and their fellow teammates and the administration, because we just want them to be successful. So, when they talk about social media, I don't read the comments because I get angry, I get mad, especially when it's attacking one of my student athletes. And I think, you don't know what goes on behind the scenes. You don't know what's going on in their world every day. How dare you judge whether we won or lost? Like, that's all you care about is a win or a loss. But our students bear so many burdens that they should never have to. And unless you're in it on a daily basis and you have that relationship with them, you don't know that. So, I don't read comments because I get mad. So, and I try to limit my time on social media because I know it's not always necessarily the healthiest place for me to be from a mental health standpoint. So, like I said, we've come so far, but we have a really long way to go. But as women, I feel like we're obligated to continue to support other women in this. And this is no slight to men, because there have been some incredible men that have lifted up women and given us all opportunities to be where we are. And so, kudos to them and to those that are out there that really empower us and support us and say we're doing good jobs. And because we need to hear that, we need that validation that what we're doing and the work that we're doing is important and impactful. So we got a long way to go, but there definitely are challenges, and there are male and female challenges too.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate you sharing that. And I think as we kind of talk about the history and the present tense of women athletics, we can also look to the future. And I think one of the key factors that's kind of common with all of our discussions here today is leadership and mentorship. How, having a good mentor, having a good leader can, kind of make a big difference as to how a student athlete feels or how you can impact the sport. So we're going to bring up a couple of our speakers to talk about students and athletes that might be interested in getting into coaching. So we're going to have Jess and April from Cal and Danielle from Clarion. I'll bring you right up here. Let's talk a little bit about coaching. What advice would you have to tell, a young student, whether they're in high school, whether they're in college, but they're interested in coaching? What's some advice that you would give them?
For me, I would say go for it. I tell everybody I have the best job in the world because it's not a job to me. I was very unique in my journey to coaching because I had no idea what I wanted to do. I just know I was very passionate about basketball, but sports in general. And I had an opportunity at Cal, and I've never coached another place. So for me, it's my players are my extended family. So anyone who's interested at all in coaching, my players, anyone younger, I always tell them it is not a job, it's a lifestyle. But for me, it's the best. I have friends that have 9-to-5s and they do these jobs and they it's a job and they get paid and it's fine. But to me, I have players calling at 10 o'clock at night and people can't imagine this life, but those players and myself build relationships to where when they're done, they're still part of this family. So, we get invited to weddings and we see pictures of their kids. And so to me, coaching is definitely a lifestyle, but I would promote it to anyone.
Yeah, April, is that the same thought you had over at Cal?
Yes, literally. I was just like Jess. I had no idea what I wanted to do in life. But here I am coaching, and I was just given the opportunity at a young age to get involved in it. And I love it. For me, the reason why I coach is because I love to make a difference in people's lives. I love to help them in those struggles in life. And so that's why I coach. I've been through some ups and downs in life, like everyone has. But I've used those to kind of teach others how to get through those as well. So I would say go for it. It is the best job. It's rewarding. My kids say, Mommy is the best job in the world. I want to be a swim coach when I get older. I think it's important to, if they want to do it, go do it. The opportunity is there. The hurdles are always going to be there. But if you're passionate about it, A, it doesn't feel like a job. And B, you're going to get to where you want to go.
No, I think those are two great examples. I mean, this is definitely a lifestyle. And one of the things that I think speak volumes to me is I didn't even know I wanted to get into coaching. I thought after I got done playing, like I wanted to be in counseling or whatever. I just didn't see myself in coaching. And then I was given an opportunity to coach 7th graders, and that changed my world. I'm like, oh, I want to do this for the rest of my life. And so sometimes when I get players in, I don't even think it's a thought for them like, oh, I can coach and then I want to be a neonatal surgeon or whatever. I'm like, well, have you thought about coaching? And they're like, oh, well. And so, when we're doing drills or we're doing what, I give my players opportunities to lead. A lot of times I give them opportunities, especially my upperclassmen, hey, run this drill or run this session or whatever. And they're like, oh, I love this. I like this. And so then from there, I think you give the opportunities like, hey, send out emails, see if you can be a grad assistant, see if you can do some training in the summer. So I think, planting seeds in our athletes and then the ones that already know they want to do it, just giving them resources and helping them in any way you can, and I tell our players all the time, like, when you're these 4 years, think of it as like an audition. As you're playing basketball and you're playing these other teams, yeah, you want to win, but carry yourself in this manner because you never know if Edinburgh or Cal, they need a GA, and when you're done, they can reach out to you. So I always let them know that there's always opportunities out there if you want it, but you got to go get it. You got to be a go-getter, and nobody's just going to give you anything. You got to go get it. So
Very good. Thank you for sharing that. I think we have one final question. I'm going to bring the group back on the screen again. We're going to kind of wrap things up. First off, I wanted to thank everybody. There were some great ideas, some great stories. Everything that we shared today was very valuable, and I'm happy to be able to use this as a resource to share with our Penn West community. As we wrap up, I do kind of want to look to the future. How are athletics going to change? Women's athletics, how's it going to change in the next 10, 15, 50 years? Let's talk about whether it's the equality of opportunity for students or kind of the exposure on media and on TV. So let's start with Karen and Bella from Cal. How do you think women's athletics are going to change? Bella, why don't you go first?
I feel like even in my lifetime, so much has already happened. I know I brought up the Equal Play, Equal Pay Act from the women's national team, and we talked about the increased visibility, especially of like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. I just feel like with continued effort and stuff like this, where we actually all just get to sit down and have a conversation and make people aware of how we feel as athletes or as coaches, or just as someone watching the game, like how we view it. I feel like we're really going to move towards equality and just overall opportunity, recognition, and I just think respect as well, because I feel like male athletes get a lot more respect than females do, but I feel like we are moving in that right direction, and especially in 50 years from now, I feel like we're going to get so far in that time.
Bella, great answer. So Karen, before you answer this, how do you feel about your young student athletes and your coaches having these perspectives about women athletics? There are some very important topics that we shared today. So, kind of talk a little bit about that.
I would say for everyone on this call, so proud of just the vast different viewpoints that we have talked about today, and really understanding where women are in sports and where opportunities are for them in the future. We are a group where I think a lot have had opportunities when they were younger to start in AAU basketball or club volleyball and to grow within the sport that they love for many years. When older administrators like myself, as Wendy had talked about with her mom, didn't have those opportunities. So we can see that shift already taking place. But so many changes are still occurring in athletics right now, very rapidly. But I see a lot of equality in the future. I was just talking with one of our coaches, Patrick Ewing's daughter, who plays volleyball, was just signed at Penn State. So we see men who have women or have girls as their children, supporting them in their lifestyle and their goals as a female student athlete. So it's great to see. I think those shifts are going to continue to occur, and we're going to see many changes in women's athletics moving forward.
All right, thanks, Karen. Did anybody else want to add before we wrap up? Anything else to add to our projection of how women's athletics can change over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I'd like to add something really quickly. We're all talking about collegiate athletics and, us as professional coaches and administrators at the collegiate level. But I think where it really needs to evolve is at the youth level. I'm going through an experience right now with my daughter, and she does travel softball, travel basketball, and I have a totally different perspective because this is my profession. And a lot of times there's parents involved while your kid is learning the sport, growing with the sport, and there's obviously biases. And I think we need to encourage young women at this level to be coaches at the youth level. I talked a little bit about it before. When I was growing up, I never had a female head coach. They were always a male head coach. So I never knew that I really had this opportunity growing up, where I think we could start creating that change right now if we encourage our student athletes to start coaching these young girls at the youth level. And we could start to see that change come up through where we are now. And like I said, I know it's not the topic we're on, but I think that's where the change needs to start so that we can start giving these young girls more opportunities and building their confidence and empowering them and showing them, hey, you don't have to be pitted against each other. You can grow together. And I think we'll create a lot of positive change in that way too.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Well, I wanted to thank all of our Vulcans, Golden Eagles, and Fighting Scots for joining us today. Whether you're an administrator, a student athlete, or a coach, or an athletic trainer, you make a difference every day. And I just want to thank everybody for not only the work that they do on this call, on this little presentation here, but what you do every day for athletics programs for universities. So thank you for everybody. Thank you everybody for watching us. Once again, this video is going to be on YouTube. So if you'd like to rewatch it, or if you'd like to share with, you know, like Callie said, a young woman who's interested in getting into athletics, or somebody that wants to be a coach, feel free to use this as a resource. So thank you very much, and have a great rest of your Women's History Month.
Thank you.